Welcome to Imperfect Love with Dr. Carla Marie Manly, psychologist, author, and relationship expert. I'm here to help unravel mysteries and misconceptions about love, relationships, and mental health issues, plus everything in between. Love is complicated, people are not perfect, and relationships surely can be tough. Together, we'll navigate this messy, imperfect space of real life.
Romantic relationships. We love them, sometimes we hate them, and in many cases, we just put up with them. We're told that romance should be easy, but the truth is, heart-connected relationships require loads of devotion and mindful effort. While there isn't a magical cure for relationship blues, there are steps we can each take to create loving connection and lasting joy. So whether your romantic relationship is new or decades old, you and your partner will enjoy tips from today's guest, intimacy expert Susan Bratton. And today we'll focus on this listener's real-life question. My partner and I have been married for 6 years. Over time, our love life has gone from great to zero. Other than occasional conflicts, we get along okay, but I want more than just okay. My best friend says it's normal and that I should be happy with what I have, but I want passion. I want to feel in love again. Am I asking for too much? And with that question as the focus of today's episode, I'm Dr. Carla Marie Manly, and this is Imperfect Love. Welcome to the podcast, Susan. It's such a blessing to have you with us today.
Hi, Carla. So great to see you. We're local Californians together, and I'm impatiently waiting for your book to arrive on my doorstep because it looks fantastic. So I'm so happy to be here today talking about relationship values.
Wonderful. And I imagine you're referring to my fourth book, The Joy of Imperfect Love, because
I
we
am.
are talking about imperfect love and sex and intimacy today. So, my goodness, before we launch into the heart of today's podcast, could you tell our listeners just a little bit about what makes you you?
Sure. Well, as intimacy expert to millions for the last 2 years, two decades, 2 years, no, 2 decades, yes. I have been an intimacy expert, and that's different than a therapist or a sexologist. My focus is on passionate lovemaking techniques, bedroom communication skills, and intimate wellness ideas and strategies and what's going on in the world so that one can have an intimate life that keeps getting better and better over the years instead of getting worse and worse, which is what most people's do. My focus is on extending your sex span to extend your health span so that you live a longer, healthier, and happier life. Because the couples that can maintain their intimacy and grow it and make it stronger are the couples that can really go the distance and have the best lives of all. And everything about intimacy and our bodies and pleasure is learned. These are learned skills. You're not born knowing them. And that's what I do. I teach people how to transform having sex into making love, having the kind of relationship that fuels them and fuels their creativity and passion. So I'm really an author and publisher of passionate lovemaking techniques and communication skills.
Beautiful, beautiful background. And just slowing it down, I love how you talk about the communication piece because often we go straight into wanting passionate sex and passionate sex to continue and more passionate sex. And we sometimes forget that piece of emotional connection, intimate communication, healthy communication that all sets the stage for the really wonderful, passionate lovemaking. Because if it's just sex, and maybe it feels super great in the moment, maybe it doesn't. But that doesn't isn't what keeps a relationship going strong, as you're saying. What keeps it going strong are the communication techniques, the strategies that we're going to dive into for fostering the emotional intimacy that fosters the sexual intimacy. I'm so excited. So, where would you like to start in responding to our listener's question, which I have to say, I get variations of that question all of the time, both relating to the podcast and from clients who look to me as a psychologist to say, how can you help my marriage or my relationship? Or sometimes it's, somebody they've met just recently where there isn't a formal relationship, but they're already finding that initial spark didn't even last a month or two and they want it back. So, what would you say for our listener who's looking to get out of the doldrums in the relationship?
Yeah, so this is an interesting thing because you're spot on with regard to, as my friend Emily, Dr. Emily Moore says, she says communication is lubrication. And I teach a lot of passionate lovemaking techniques and pleasuring skills, but they sit on a foundation of solid communication. And we're not taught any of these kinds of intimate communication techniques. And what I have found over the years is that most couples actually need to take one step back from that and understand their relationship values. So, what I have found generally over the decades is that couples treat their partner the way they want to be treated. And, we've been taught the golden rule, right? Do unto others as you'd have them do unto you. You'd think that treating your partner the way you want to be treated is the right thing to do. But in actual fact, it's better to follow the platinum rule. The platinum rule of relationships is treat your partner the way they want to be treated and have them treat you the way you want to be treated. Because frankly, most people are in a masculine, feminine, pair bonded relationship. And everything I'm about to say works for any relationship construct. But I speak to that kind of big part of the bell curve, which is where most people are, a dude and his lady. And we end up not understanding the difference between the masculine and feminine enough. And so if your partner's treating you the way he wants to be treated, and you're wondering why he's doing the things he's doing, it's just because he doesn't understand what you want. And things can't get good in the bedroom till they're good in the rest of the house. So, what I have done is I've put together something called an NLP values elicitation. NLP, or neuro linguistic programming, is essentially the operating system of our communication structures of our brain. How to talk to people so they can take it in, understand it, and act on it. And values elicitation is a tool that therapists use and communicators use so that you can meet people where they are in their thinking and help them move forward. And I've applied this construct, which is applied to many different scenarios, to a couple so that they can play the platinum rule. And essentially, what it is a workbook. It's at myrelationshipmagic.com. It's also on Amazon. You can get it either place if you want the printed version, or you can just print it out at home. And it walks you through asking what it is that you want out of your relationship. And then you write these things down and you rank order them. And you keep thinking to yourself, would I be in a relationship if I couldn't have this? Would I be in a relationship if I couldn't have this? And I give you about, I don't know, 100 different things that are the catalysts for your thinking. And pretty much, I've never had anybody say, the thing I came up with wasn't in the book. So what's interesting about it is that you list them, but then you just keep working that list until you really get to your truth about what it is that you want. What are the feelings you want to feel? What are the boundaries, the supports, the needs, the desires, the experiences, the relational dynamics of a relationship that would serve you completely? This is where you get to be as selfish as you want. Because ultimately, your partner wants to give you what they want, what you want. They just don't know what it is. And when I say to men especially, would you like a cheat sheet to your partner's happiness? Would you like a checklist list of the things they want most from you, so you could just do them, and that would meet 80% of their dream come true relationship, they're like, oh my gosh, yes, I need that desperately because I've been taking shots in the dark here. So you go through this rank ordering process, and then you end up with kind of your non-negotiables. And what I have found is that 4 relationship values is really the sweet spot. That's when relationship magic happens. Because it's the 80-20 rule, Pareto's principle. When your partner is giving you those very, very important things that you want, and I'm going to explain more about that, you really feel like you are in the perfect relationship. Your needs are getting met. And what I've found through the years is that the needs of a woman are very different than the needs of a man. And that's a lot because of nature and nurture. The nature is our hormone profiles. As estrogen dominant women, we don't walk in the world safely. We're massive multitaskers. We need a lot of encouragement and adoration and appreciation, and we need it verbally. Most of us really need to hear that. And of course, we have our love languages, and you might have some predominant ones, and you might be like me, where you're like, well, I really want them all. Give me everything. But it goes beyond love languages. This is not love languages. What men want is to be respected and to win, because they don't worry about how they walk in the world, but they are conquerors. And they live in a pecking order. Man land is a pecking order. You're either up or you're down. And so they're very hierarchical, where women are much more team oriented and group oriented and community oriented. And so what men want is respect, and they want to know they did a great job. So you'll find that generally the kinds of things that are on the values, the relationship values that are on a man's list are different than a woman's list, though often you'll find that there's at least one, sometimes even 2, that are the same because you share common values. And your values are something that are set in very early in your childhood. And your values can change a bit over your lifetime, but they're fairly steady state because they are the nurture part of what makes you you. And that is the lens through which you look at life based on your experiences. So when you get this list and you work it up, and maybe you've got 10 things on there, 8 things on there, 12 things on there, but you've really got this top set of non-negotiables. If you didn't get these things, would you stay in that relationship? Probably not. Or if you were in it, you wouldn't be happy. So if you're in a relationship where you're not currently happy, it is a very, very helpful thing to go through this process and discover what it is that you're not getting that you need to be happy. And then the second step of the process is to give very specific examples of what your partner would do to make you feel those feelings you want to feel. And I can give you some specific examples just so you understand, but I'll stop now so you can get a word in. But thank you for letting me lay that out, because it's helpful for people to hear the whole thing at once.
Absolutely, because when you set the foundation, and you and I are quite similar in approach. When I think of the books that I've worked with love, whether it's my third book, Date Smart, or The Joy of Imperfect Love, I really focus a lot on values and priorities, because partners who have shared values and
Yeah.
shared priorities do tend to get along more smoothly. And sometimes in the dating process, we assume, we don't get granular. We weren't taught these skills. So we think, oh, I like this person, they're on the same trajectory, I think they are, they want this, I want that. But we don't really, or we have the same religion or spiritual beliefs, the same exercise habits, but we don't do what you're talking about, which is really slowing down, calling through them, working to find out what are the top ones. And I use a similar approach, similar but different. And I love that you offer this as a resource for people to get online or to download from your website, because it's so helpful and worth the effort. Listeners, so worth the effort to go to either a self-help book or a website to concretize some of these things. Because when they're out in the air in a relationship, we can believe we're on the same page as a partner. But when we get it down on paper, do that work for the self. And I agree with you. It's not, I don't see it as being selfish. I see it as being self-full. When we turn inward and say, it's one of the first things I do in Date Smart, that book, it's about looking at, wait a minute, what are my needs here? What do I have to offer? Who am I? And that self-awareness piece, which is what you were talking about, we must grow our self-awareness before we can really begin to get what we want. And if we're in a committed relationship or looking for one, the people that we're interviewing as dating partners, let's do this. Let's look at this to see if we're a good fit. And if we're already in a committed relationship, whether it's a marriage or not, it's never too late to sit down with a partner and go, let's take a little refresher here.
Yeah.
Let's look at this.
Mhm.
And you're looking at our listener's question who's saying, hey, things are okay. Well, it's likely that their values and their priorities are misaligned or out of touch. And this person's wanting, we're not sure exactly what they're wanting more of. They're wanting passion. We can guess that that's more sex. Maybe it's more emotional intimacy. Maybe it's better sex, more frequent sex. But looking at those things, and for some people, sex after the courting phase, it seems like a high priority when you're dating or you're, in the early honeymoon phases. But for some people, once that's done, they're like, it's not so important anymore. And the other person's going, is it me? What's happened here? Because for them, sexual intimacy, I was working with a client just this week where that's exactly the issue. And this client's thinking, is it me? We had great sex and now it's all turned off. What do I do? And this is some of, you can't have these big conversations if you're in a defensive space or a not knowing space, or if your partner's in a defensive space or not knowing space. We need these conversations, which many of us feel uncomfortable having. So, listener, if you're uncomfortable talking with your partner about sexuality, about sexual intimacy, remember, you can see it like having, I like to look at it like having more salt and pepper on your, food at home. We don't hesitate to say, hey, I need more pepper, or I'd like some more salt. And we just talk about it and say, hey, when you make this next time, could you add a little more pepper? And when we learn to do it, it might feel anxiety inducing at first, but the more we learn to have these conversations from a really safe space in the self and helping the partner be in a safe space, the more we can ultimately get to the places you'll lead us today about those bigger steps that lead to the more passionate sexual intimacy. Did I get that right?
Yes. Of course, you got it perfect. The relationship magic workbook is not necessarily just a sexual conversation book. Though it does help that, and I have a little story to illustrate that. I have an entirely different technique called the Sexual Soulmate Pact for bedroom communication that overcomes the biggest hurdles, which are people are embarrassed to talk about it or they're afraid to say something. And then their partner is like, well, I know, you don't have to tell me, that they're defensive, they raise their defenses, or they're not sure what they want. They just know what they're getting isn't it. It fixes those problems. But the relationship magic workbook process is it can help with sexuality, but what it really does is it level sets your entire relationship. So you feel like you're in a great relationship so that it's much more likely that you're going to want to continue to be physically intimate with your partner as well. And I'd like to give you a really great example of John and Robin who did this process. And it's kind of a fun thing to do on a date night, frankly. Do your workbooks beforehand and then compare your notes. It's very, very juicy conversation. So John and Robin were married for a while, and Robin felt like John was kind of always grabbing at her. And she didn't really like that. And John was kind of frustrated because Robin wasn't having as much intimate time with him as he wanted. So they sat down and they did the relationship magic workbook. And Robin's top four relationship values were number one was security. Number two was, and I might not get these in exactly the right order because I've heard thousands and thousands of people's lists, but I think it was like variety, novelty, kind of a thing. She wanted to do a lot of different things. Oh no, it was freedom. She wanted security and then she wanted freedom. Then she wanted variety and fun, doing a lot of fun things, and she wanted honesty. And John's relationship values were passion, growth, honesty, and adventure. So they really had the variety, novelty, adventure thing already working together. They had the honesty pieces of things. What Robin wanted was for John to totally take care of her and give her all the rope possible so that she could have freedom to do things that she wanted to do. Because John was kind of an introvert and she was an extrovert, and she liked to go off and do things with people, and he would rather stay home. And so those were pretty easy things. And she said, what does security mean? And she gave him things that were really important to her. I really want to make sure we always have health care. We always have savings in the bank. We have our home has a working alarm. My car is in good working order. Um, that I'm just safe, that you're watching over me.
Mm.
She came from a very insecurely attached childhood with a lot of trauma and drama. And she needed someone who was very placid, and because she came in from such a household of mercurial emotion that it
Mhm.
was exhausting to her. She liked how calm John was, and she wanted protection. And so she told him all the ways that she needed him to protect her. She loved that her kind of, and she wanted the freedom to go off and do things. And he was fine with that. He's like, yes, I can totally take care of you. And yes, of course you can go off and have good times that I don't want to go to. And the honesty, they wanted to tell the truth to each other. They saw a lot of their friends withholding and, pushing things under the carpet. And they just didn't want to get into that. They wanted to be able to say anything that they wanted to say to each other. And they were both a yes to that because they'd been in a relationship prior where they were blindsided by things with their
Mhm.
partners. And that did not make Robin feel secure. And it didn't make John feel confident. And John wanted passion. And she was like, well, what does that mean? And he said, well, I want to see you naked. I want to see you towel off when you get out of the shower. I love to see your body. I want you to come sit on my lap in the morning and give me a kiss. I want to hold you at night when we're watching
Mm.
television. I want us to kiss goodbye and hello every time we leave and get back together. And I like just touch. I like a lot of touch. John was a very kinesthetic person. He was very, very bright, very mathematical. He had like a wall of spreadsheets around his desk. He loved to go into his numbers. And when he came out, he wanted to be touched. And that's when Robin realized, oh, all that grabbing that he's doing for me is his bids for physical attention.
Mm.
And so then she was really understanding what he was doing, and she was able to be really proactive about that. And because she came from a family where she wasn't touched much, she had to kind of get used to it, like almost being like a puppy dog that doesn't like to get petted. And then you offer it a treat and it'll come over and you can get a couple of pets in until it gets socialized to petting. That's
Mm.
how Robin was from her childhood. And so over the years, as she kind of focused on John's relationship values and did the, toweling off and the lingerie he liked and the things that were important to him. She used to feel like lingerie was degrading. And then she realized, oh, he loves to see me like this. I can do this for him. And then she ended up loving to wear lingerie for him. So, our partners do help us mature and grow and expand from things that we don't understand or the traumas that we've had. They are our best support. And so it ended up that she got up every day and focused on passion and growth for John. He Robin's very intelligent. John's very intelligent. They're very lucky. They married well together. They're kind of an intellectual match of firepower. And that was good for both of them. And John supported Robin's ambitions. And he was really kind of the wind beneath her wings in that way.
Mm.
And she could see his potential. And he loved it when she said, John, you're doing this right now, but here's where I see you going. I think you could be really like living into this even bigger thing. And he was so in the weeds with all his data and his mathematics and his historical actuarial things that he needed her big picture strategic mind to show him what he was capable of, behind every great man is a great woman kind of thing. And so once they got their relationship values and they understood kind of the behaviors, oh, I see why you're doing that to me. Now that makes sense. And I know what to get up every day and make sure I do. I make sure the tires work and the car works and the health insurance is paid and I'm protecting you and taking care of you and I've got you and I've got my eye on you and it's very clear that you're safe with me.
Hmm.
It was super good for them and that was the foundation that allowed them to move into intimate play that didn't feel weird to her because now she understood how kinesthetic he was and how much he loved to get his hands on her.
Absolutely. And I appreciate the case study because we can often see from case studies, segments, listeners, you may find a lot of this that resonates with you, pieces that resonate with you. And I think it's so important to dive into these kind of activities with a partner. It's why every single one of my books has exercises in it.
Yeah,
Why? Because we can read a book, but if we don't have exercises that pull us out of the cerebral place and
yeah,
into actually diving inward for some self-assessment,
yes.
self-awareness, we don't generally shift just by reading. It's why, from grade school forward, we don't just read books. We do the exercises. Why? Because that's where we learn, that's where we expand. And then in the case study you gave us, it's so interesting that you're talking about the man grabbing the woman, because that's something I've seen throughout the years. And often the woman who doesn't like to be grabbed, not that most people like to be grabbed, there's often some sort of sexual assault history or objectification where they felt, and then once they understand, oh, this person's just trying to touch me or get close to me. And then when the other person understands, wait a minute, every time I grab, I'm triggering this individual, whether they're unfamiliar with touch and weren't touched as a child, as you're saying, so it doesn't feel familiar, or whether there's some sort of trauma underneath that, the more we come together with our partners to, instead of accusing or deriding them, but to understand and create that connection through understanding, that's where things begin to blossom and we can grow and change. Because I always say we definitely change throughout life.
Oh, sure.
Do we change with intention and awareness, or do we
Right.
let life change us by default? And if
Hmm.
we let life change us by default, it's often not in our best interest.
Hmm.
But what you're talking about is a lot of consciousness, a lot of mindfulness,
Hmm.
and really using skills and what you learn, not to throw daggers at your partner or withhold from your partner, quite the opposite, to treat your partner the way they want to be treated.
The platinum rule.
The
Voila.
platinum rule. And it's interesting because when you think about it in life, when we go to a restaurant and the server is bringing something to us, we want them to treat us the way we want to be treated. We want them to bring us tea if that's what we've ordered. We want them to bring us tofu if that's what we've ordered. We don't want them to put a big beef steak in front of us if that's not what we need or have asked for. It's the exact same thing in relationships. And people often, I've found, hit a big speed bump on that because our culture often teaches people, if you're doing what your partner wants, then your partner is wearing the pants or you're wearing the skirt. And we're overgeneralizing here, listeners. I know we're being a bit cisgender in some of or descriptions, but we're just using that for ease. But there's so much, especially from, men who think that, oh, if I pay attention to my wife and I give her or my partner and give them what they really want and love them the way they want, I've lost. This goes directly back to the part where you said men tend to have a win-lose mentality.
Yes.
And whether it's regardless of your gender, if you have a win-lose mentality, everybody loses in the relationship, whether
Well,
you're
and I
the
don't even
woman.
think it's men have. I honestly think it's our culture has
Hmm.
imbued them with a very limited set of emotional range. And that's the healing that is a big part of men's work, is to get out of just pecking order, victim mindset, anger, those kinds of things, and to have more of a variety of emotion and to be able to have help accessing their emotions, which is why a lot of the a lot of the techniques and exercises that I offer don't require conversation. And that's why I think the Relationship Magic Workbook is so helpful, in that you mostly just do it yourself and then you write down the specifics of your needs and you read them to your partner. Because I think generally most men don't feel like anything where there's going to be a conversation is going to be a level playing field. It's going to be harder for them than it is for their female partner, because women generally have more ability to articulate their feelings and things like that.
I agree with you again, because I often say that women, we are given by society, we are given the right to be okay, to be happy, to be occasionally sad. Other than that, we're not really supposed to feel other emotions. Men are given the, green flag to be okay, very rarely sad, and they are also given the red light for being sensitive, and they're given a big green light for anger.
Yes.
So when we look at that and how different it is, and yes, for all of us to realize we have those five basic emotions: fear, sadness, disgust, anger, joy. For a reason, they're all messengers, and all of our feelings are our messengers. And it's part of our right, and I say our responsibility, to get in touch with our emotional world, because we can't express our feelings and our needs if we aren't aware of what our feelings are or what our needs are. So I know you are giving our listeners such a beautiful platform for being able to get in touch with what's really important to them, convey it in workbook form so it doesn't feel too intimidating from doing that workbook, convey it to a partner, but they're first conveying it to themselves in a
Yeah.
very self-full way, a very self-aware way. And it's funny, I was having a conversation with my hubby the other day. We were talking about my core needs, and I'm like, oh, kindness and respect. And underneath the kindness and the respect are because if somebody's treating me with respect, then they will necessarily be honest and transparent and have integrity with me. And if they're being kind, they will naturally be showing me empathy and consideration. So we all can come to those places of our truth. And once we know our truth, then we can convey that and have boundaries around that. And once we've conveyed it and the other person is living with the platinum rule and treating the partner in the way that they're asking to be treated and wanting to be treated, that is where the intimacy comes. And then from that intimacy, the deeper and more passionate sexual intimacy, because then you can have those conversations.
Yeah, one of my girlfriends, one of her top two relationship values are devotion and wit. And she says, I mean, I don't even have a 3 and 4, because my partner, he's totally devoted to me and he's funny as hell. And she said, so I could have the nested desire to have him be intelligent, but you can't be witty unless you're smart. So that takes care of that anyway.
We can keep it simple, can't
Yeah.
we? So, oh my goodness, I know we could go. You have so many other pieces to offer, yet I think our emotional plates might be full, listeners. There's a lot of richness here and a lot of beauty. Susan, are there any other pieces that you feel are really point us back to the listener's question or help our listeners in general?
Well, I don't remember if we mentioned the three things I love about you or
We
not.
didn't. Please
We
do.
didn't. Okay. Well, we were going to go into that too, but I agree with you. The emotional plate is full, and the relationship magic workbook is probably good enough for today. I can come back. It's no problem. But I will leave a link then. I have an email newsletter at betterlover.com. And it has all my communication. I write 2 times a week newsletter emails that have links to things like workbooks and exercises and techniques and pleasure skills and things like that. I'd love for you to get on my newsletter and take all my free content and improve your sex life because we didn't get into that. But on betterlover.com, there is a video called Three Things I Love About You. And that is a game that you play with your partner, and you can play it for the rest of your life. Anytime that you would like to hear what your partner loves about you, you ask them, tell me three things that you love about me. And they'll tell you three things. And often the game is played best when you try not to repeat things, when instead you're looking for the new reasons that you love your partner all the time, something they did, something you noticed, anything. When you do that, it really helps women feel adored, appreciated, and encouraged, and men feel like they're winning and respected and loved. And that is a really nice game. And I tell you exactly how to play it at betterlover.com. So I think that's a nice additional kind of little bonusy thing we could talk about. And if you have any questions for me about anything that I've said or anything that I haven't, ask me all your sex questions. I mean, that's really my sweet spot. Um, if you get a newsletter from me, just hit reply and ask me anything. It goes right to my inbox. I personally answer those, and I can probably point you in the direction of things that will be your next steps to wherever you are getting to wherever you want to be. So I would say betterlover.com is probably the place to find me. And then I'm on Instagram. You can DM me from there as well. And that's my name, Susan Bratton, SusanBratton, Susan Bratton.
Thank you so much for
Sure.
that wealth of information. And I do have to say, on the three things I love about you, it is funny that you said that because my husband and I do our weekend walks, and every once in a while, it's probably once a month, once every other month, I naturally say, "Hey, hon, tell me." I don't say three things. I think I say something like nine things. Tell me 10 things or whatever it is, or 11 things that you love about me. And he'll do his little list. And so you're right. It makes
Yeah.
you feel seen. It
Mhm.
makes you feel cherished. It makes you feel, and it's interesting when I do his and do his, 12 things I love about him back to him. He likes it. He's kind of off in another world because I think I say it and show it so frequently to
Mhm.
him that maybe he doesn't, sometimes they forget that you want to also be giving some of that back. So it's a beautiful place to end because it is so true. Stating what we like or appreciate about a partner is one of the things that really keeps a relationship going, that appreciation, that seeing them. And, listeners, I think it's a great game and you can find it on Dr. Susan's website. I'm sorry, it's not Dr. Susan, it's Susan Bratton, and it's at betterlover.com, and you can sign up for her email. No tricks there, just be on that email list if you want to hear more from
Just
this.
treats. No tricks, just
No
treats.
treats, just lots of no tricks, just lots of treats to help you connect with your partner. Connect with yourself. That is a big piece I'm taking away from our conversation today. You and I are so aligned on that, that it's that self-connection, that self-awareness. And then from there, being able to reach toward and reach toward. It's just gorgeous. Susan, thank you so much
Thank
for
you,
your
Dr.
time and
Carla.
wisdom today. It has been beautiful. And
Yeah.
to listeners, thank you, my listeners, for being with us on yet another beautiful adventure and journey. It is such a joy and a pleasure take good care. And this is Imperfect Love.
Thanks so much for sharing your time with me today. Remember, you have the power to transform your life and love fearlessly, if imperfectly, and it's my privilege to help you along the way. You can find more life-changing content, including my books and other podcast episodes, at drcarlamanly.com. Feel free to submit your own confidential questions through my website. I'll do my very best to include your issue on a future episode. If you found this podcast helpful, please subscribe and leave a review. Until we connect again, this is Dr. Carla Marie Manly wishing you oceans of blessings and love. Please note, this podcast is psychoeducational in nature and is not intended to replace formal mental health support. Please contact your healthcare provider or emergency hotline if you need psychiatric care. And as always, please take good care of your amazing, wonderful self.